Don't feel bad about it. Don't take it personally. But sometimes the problem is you. Hello, and welcome to Our Hearts Are Restless. My name is Alexis. Thank you so much for joining me. Today, we're going to talk about apologetics, specifically how to approach apologetics when you're actually talking to someone. And this is something that's really near to my heart because ever since I converted, there is this desire for me to just share it with everybody. But not everybody is willing to listen all the time, which is understandable. And so I want to share 3 things that I've learned. I'm not, I'm not like Trent Horn or Dr. E. Michael Jones. I'm not quick like that. I have not had enough practice, which is a big part of apologetics. You have to practice. So this is from someone who's just getting better, slowly but surely, at apologetics. And I've had many, many conversations with specific family members and friends. And so there are 3 things that I've learned that I needed to be ingrained in my head whenever I have these conversations with different people. So let's get started. Number one is you do not know everything. You think you might know everything, but then something will come up, someone will ask you a question, and then at that moment, you're going to think like, oh, shoot, I have no idea. And the thing that you have to remember at that point is admit it. Admit that you don't know. It will happen more times than you think. Admit that you don't know. And that humbles you. That is such a humbling experience when someone asks you a question about something that you think you know so much about, and then you're just there, just thinking like, oh, I have no clue. But let me go and look it up. Let me read a little bit, listen to different things, different podcasts, if that's your thing, or read more about it, and I will come back to you and tell you what I found. And that is just the best thing, because then this person who you're talking to, kind of trusts you more because you're willing to take the time to look it up for them. I have this friend who finds it amazing that like I read so much about God, about theology, about philosophy, about the Catholic Church in general. And she said like, wow, I can't believe that you read so much about this. Like I don't think I could. And I said, well, it's true. And it is the truth. So if Catholicism, if God is true, we must want to learn more about him, about what he created, about the church. And so where am I getting at with this? So if you tell this person like, I don't know, let me go look it up and I'll come back to you, then it kind of shows how much this is important to you, and to some degree at least you're showing to them that it is true. Like if you're just saying like, oh well, I don't know, you look it up yourself, well then that just means that this topic is not that important to you, and therefore this is just it doesn't matter if they know or if you don't know. You know what I'm saying? So admit that you're wrong. Be humble. Not you're wrong. Admit that you don't know. Be humble enough to admit that you don't know, and come back to them when you do know. And they will appreciate it because they're like, okay, well, they took the time to actually look it up instead of telling me to just Google it, or, just admit like Socrates that you don't know. The only thing that you know is you know nothing. And that's what you're sure of. And no one likes a know-it-all, So which comes to my next point. Be charitable. Be as charitable as you can. No matter how much you might know, you might say to this person, and you might, give them all the facts and things like that. But your approach on how you speak to this person, if you speak to them with dignity, they will listen. They're more inclined to listen. But if you speak to them as if they are stupid from the get-go, then of course they're going to shut down. They're going to not want to keep talking to you. It's like when you're a teenager and you think you know it all, and you think your parent, you tell your parents, "Oh, you guys don't understand me. You just don't get it. You don't understand my life." And then you start telling your parents of all these things that you know and that they could never possibly understand. It's kind of like that. Like, do not underestimate that person's ability to understand. And also, because I think we forget that when we're so in it, right? Like when you are constantly thinking about God, that's another thing, right? We don't realize that there are people out there. We forget that there are people who don't think about God at all, anytime in their lives. Like 2 days ago, I went to I go to the boulangerie, the bakery. I went to the bakery the other day, and I had to remove stuff from my bag because I couldn't fit in the baguette. I know, super French. I couldn't fit the baguette into the bag, and I had to take out my book. And the boulangère, the baker lady, said, "Oh, you read?" And I was like, "Yeah, I love to read." And she said, "Oh, what are you reading? Or what's this book about?" And I said, "It's about theology." And she said, "What's theology?" Quick side note, this month on our book club, we're reading Frank Sheed's Theology and Sanity, and I highly, highly recommend it for those of you who want to read any more. If you have any books to recommend, please comment down below on books on apologetics that could help other people. Thank you. She had no idea what theology was. And so there are people out there who have no idea, no clue that there's, because God, this whole world with God, Catholicism is a whole new world. Not everybody, just like any other, topic out there, Buddhism, Islam, there is a world for every subject. But because I'm saying, like, there are so many people that don't think about God at all. I've never really thought about it. They're not militant atheists. They just literally have never thought of God at all. So that when you bring up these subjects, be charitable. Put yourself in that person's position. Perhaps they're lifelong atheists. Perhaps they were Catholic before and they're now no longer Catholic. Perhaps they're just, they just don't understand. Like they don't feel the need, or they don't see the need to know more about God. Everybody has their own path in this world. And so if you just go in there, go out at full force, like, here are the facts, here are the facts, here are the facts, they're just not going to want to listen to you. They're not, because it will feel like to them that you're just trying to convert them, which is impossible because you cannot convert them. Only God will convert. He will give them the grace. There are steps. There are little things where, we're not all like, we won't all be like St. Paul, where he just comes to you and like, here, believe, what are you doing persecuting me? Most of us, it's like little by little. And it makes more sense that way, because otherwise, I remember reading this in our last book in the club, Life of Christ. Can you imagine if Jesus just told the apostles, I'm God? Then they would be less inclined to truly love him for who he is, to know him for who he is. They would have had their own inklings about who he is. They probably would have been more fearful of who he is. And so he let them discover him. And that's how God wants us to discover him, is to discover him with our own free will. He doesn't want us to just believe in him because, he'll just show himself every single time. Because even then, like, a lot of us, back 2,000 years ago, not everybody converted. Not everybody became followers of Christ. And yeah, so that's what I mean. Be charitable as you can. Remember, God is the only one who can convert them when he wants and how he wants, which leads me to my next point. Sometimes the problem is you. Okay, that don't feel bad about it. Don't take it personally. But sometimes the problem is you. the messenger. Not you as a person, but you as the messenger. Sometimes it's just the messenger. Like there are many people, like I've gotten YouTube comments saying like I'm annoying, or that I don't know what I'm talking about, or that I'm just going to go to hell, things like that. Sometimes it's just the person who's talking, and that person sometimes might be you, and they're not willing to hear it from you. It has to be someone else. And that is really, really important. Like, yes, we have this great message. We all want to share this message about God, about the Catholic Church. But sometimes you are not the person who's supposed to tell this person, or who's supposed to open up this person's heart. And also, it's just not the time. It's not their hour. It's just not their time for them to hear the specific message that you are telling them. And this happens, and this is for everybody. It's not just this person you're talking about. For you, for me, there are certain things in life that we will come to know when it's time. Motherhood. You can only understand what it is like to be a mother when you become a mother. You can think about it all you want. You can, put yourself in that situation as much as you can, but until it actually happens to you, you can't understand. And in terms of time being that person's hour, there are many things that my family, that my parents have told me when I was like a teenager, and I just dismissed it. I said like, well, this is ridiculous. Yeah, sure, whatever. But then as I grow older, I reflect on these. They come back to me, and then I understand them. And then I come to understand them at this age. So I'm 32. And there are so many things that they told me when I was like a teenager that I'm only starting to understand now, which is normal. So sometimes it's just you, the messenger, that is the problem for them. They need to hear it from someone else. They need to hear it at a different time. I've had a few friends who've gone through really, really horrible things. They're atheists. And I remember talking to them about God. And one of them said like to the other, "Oh, do you believe in God?" And they said, "Well, I don't know. A person who takes care of me all the time. But then this happened in my life, and this happened in my life." They were suffering really bad. And so at this point, all I could say at that point, because I didn't want to push anymore, because it was just too fragile of a situation to talk about it. I said, "So your problem is with suffering, and I get that." And that's basically all I could say at that time. Because I knew it wasn't the time to talk about, well, everybody suffers. Everybody in the world suffers. There are people who suffer more than you. That is not how to approach it. But I knew at that moment that was not the time to do that, because everything was just too fresh. Yeah, they might listen to you, but then they will reject it just because it's not that time that they needed to hear that. Even if it is true, even if it's truth, sometimes we need to wait. Just like with children, there are certain things we have to not tell them at the moment, because either they won't understand or it will be just too much for them. And that's what it's like when it comes to apologetics, when it comes to talking to someone. This is a person who you're talking to. They're not a robot who's just gonna take all the information that They sometimes, the way that God talks to someone is not through facts, but through beauty, through seeing how the people who do believe in God, who believe in Christ, how they live, the testimony of your life, how you are as a person. And that can be a greater thing, a greater proof for them. It's not necessarily a quote unquote logical proof, but it is what that person might need. And when it comes to the time, you can hold it all. Just like when you tell your friend, let me go back, let me go and, look it up and let me come back to you. It's the same. If there's a certain topic that you have this desire to talk to them about, just hold it off and save it for another day. That is completely fine. And more often than not, they become much more open to talk to you, because it's like, oh, you want to bring it up again, but you don't want to bring it up all the time, because there are people like I could talk about God, theology, philosophy all of the time, but there are just people don't want to talk about that all the time, which is fine. It's normal. Just save that for another day. And I mean, lastly, this is like a fourth thing, but practice. These things will only come to you through practice. Admitting that humbling moment, getting that moment to humble you, to remind you don't know everything. That can only come if you try talking to someone about it. If you try apologetics, if you practice it. Realizing that God, which is also another humbling thing, that God is the only one who convert, that only comes if you try to do apologetics. And approaching it with charity, that can only come through practice. And discerning whether it's time for them to hear a certain message, or discerning whether you're the wrong messenger, that takes practice. And so I urge you to practice. I thought about creating some sort of apologetics group, getting together once a month. I don't know if you're interested in that. Let me know in the comments or write to me. I'd love to know, because I know it's hard. Like you watch all these people do debates and things like that, and they're so quick, but they've been doing it for so many years, and they do it all the time. They didn't just all of a sudden know every single thing and didn't learn how to talk to different kinds of people all at once. It's definitely through practice. So let me know if that's something you're interested in, having like a group once a month. We pick a topic to do apologetics on, and so we can practice together. Let me know. If you have any advice on how to approach apologetics, talking to other people, please let me know in the comments below. I'm sure you have more and perhaps better ones than mine, but I would love to know, and I guess I'm sure that will help many other people and not just me. Anyways, thank you so much for joining me, and I shall see you next time. God bless.